panel is actually dig a little bit deeper into why these young people actually get involved, what inspires them to get involved, and basically, how does that make you feel? Okay, so I'm going to start with Ibrahim. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the work that you're actually doing and around especially think tanks and leadership roles?
Absolutely. Thank you once again for the introduction. My experience is actually based on my personal life. I'll give you guys some background on that. My parents are actually Syrian immigrants, so I'm also first generation, born in the United States. And I credit the immigrant generational gap for a lot of the reasons why I've pursued what I have. Every decision that my parents made was based on survival. It was based on how to best put food on the table, how to keep a roof above their children's heads. And because of their sacrifices, I was able to see self-actualization, wonder what impact I wanted to make on the world. And being very, very aware, because of my own family, that seeking to make an impact is a luxury. It's not something that a lot of people in the world are able to do. And I knew that immediately, whatever it is that I dedicated my life to, I wanted it to be something that could help people. Knowing that, being part of the diaspora, the Syrian civil war broke out. And being born in the United States and feeling separate from that, I watched that unfold from far away. And there's nothing, I think, that can wake you up more and make you more aware of your own voice than seeing something so terrible happening to people who look like you. Looking on the news and seeing, children washing up on beaches that look exactly like you. It hurts. But it also reminds you of the voice that you have. And it reminds you that because of a miracle of birth, because of a decision that my parents made, I have the opportunity to use my voice. And that's something that people like me don't always have the opportunity to do. And my definition of people like me has grown. Just being, at this conference here and speaking to other young people and other youth from all over, it's like looking into a mirror, It's making me realize that we are very much the same in our dreams and our goals and our efforts, and that's a good feeling. Falling into think tank work specifically was something that I, to be honest, fell into. I think that that's the case for a lot of people who work in think tanks. I knew that I was interested in research. I knew that I was interested in the Middle East, and I found myself interning for the Think Tanks and Civil Societies program. And it was something that immediately drew me in, because the goal of TTCSP is to encourage dialogue, to encourage cooperation between think tanks in different regions. Because think tanks, very similar to different groups that are affiliated with the UN, like they were talking about in the last panel, don't always communicate with one another, which is disappointing, especially because a lot of them work on exactly the same thing. And I feel like the issues that think tanks in different regions work on are big. And the voice of one think tank alone, it's not always enough to make a difference. So being involved in an organization that encourages dialogue, that encourages cooperation, that encourages the use of voices was very, very inspirational to me, especially because of my own backstory and my own discovery of what a gift a voice can be and how powerful a voice can be.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to Amina now. I would like you to just tell us about your earliest experiences of being empowered as a young person.
Thank you. That's a good question. I feel that, I'm from Bosnia, so being born during the war there and raised in the post-war period, there weren't many opportunities for empowerment of anybody, let alone youth or just children, adolescents. So my first opportunity that I got to be empowered and to understand what it means to be empowered as youth was actually in this country. When I started my undergraduate studies at NYU in Abu Dhabi, my first internship, which was I was an embassy relations assistant at the age of 18. And basically my role, which was at the time the most important job ever, was basically connecting the student body to their respective embassies and just being a connection between ambassadors and diplomats and the just students and staff and organizing events. So I think the culmination of that, my first year at college, was organizing Europe Day, which is 9th of May, on peace and security in Europe with Paris-Sorbonne University. And that was, I had the opportunity to be heard and participate as an equal team member in organizing events, in organizing meetings with ambassadors. And that was so important to me as somebody who was 18, who just moved to a new country, was, you know, starting their life on their own without any parent support in a physical sense of being there with my parents. So it was very much kind of, you know, when somebody of importance comes to you and asks you, what do you think? I felt so important. I felt so alive, and I think in that moment I understood, wow, this is what it feels like when somebody asks you for your question and asks you for your opinion. And that was, to me, that was the first instance of being I guess empowered, but in a way that I'm understood, I'm respected, I'm you know, asked for my opinion, and it felt nice. So yeah, and after that, kind of all the other opportunities that I got, it was very much through mentorship and through starting from that first internship experience and that year-long internship.
Okay, thank you. Akil, we'll come to you. So, a member of the Scottish Youth Parliament, a policy officer for the Scottish Parliament. How did you get involved? What inspired you to do that?
So I think it was a conundrum of things. There was quite a lot of things going on. There is when you're young. So there were three main things, I think. One was really important. The biggest thing was the referendum in Scotland. So when young people could vote at the age of 16, 17, in 2014 was when I turned 16. So I was really, really passionate about the debate. And we used to also learn about politics in class. And second was about poverty. So I didn't grow up in a deprived area, but I went to a school that, you know, served quite a lot of, you know, deprived pupils, and that's why I want to go into teaching as well, is to, you know, engage and empower young people no matter where they're from. So standing up for them, because a lot of the time they weren't being heard, they weren't involved, they were disengaged, they just went to school and that was it. They weren't part of any clubs, societies, so I wanted to engage with them and give them a voice. And third, which is quite interlinked, is I have a disability, so I've always been a campaigner. I've always campaigned with RNIB, that's the Royal National Institute for the Blind. So I'm partially sighted, and you know, I came up across a lot of barriers and things. And in primary schools as well, a lot in the UK, they're very protective of what you do in the future. So one of the main things you used to always say was you've got to be careful about what you choose. But I think that although they're being very protective of you, they're looking after you, I think that also in another context it can mean, oh, you're meaning my disability cannot enable me to do things in life, and you know, my options are going to be limited. And I didn't want that to happen. So I seen this platform, the Scottish Youth Parliament, and it's an amazing platform to engage with, you know, politicians, to engage with government, to try and make a difference. You know, instead of just campaigning and moaning on the sidelines, it's better to be involved with something and to, you know, be with like-minded people, because we're all really, you know, wanting to all work together for the better. In terms of inspiration, where do I get it from? I'm very, very lucky that my area was represented by one of the few ethnic minority MSPs who was Muslim as well, and now is also the first cabinet minister in Scotland to be in the cabinet for justice. So he's very inspirational, and he was the youngest minister in Scotland as well, and the first ethnic minority minister. And he was very engaging. He came to school a lot. We did work experience together, so I did a week's internship in the Parliament. Really interesting. And I've always been interested in the way government works, so I suppose I wanted to be involved in that political bubble to make a difference and to also learn more about how decisions are made and where do they kind of come from and what the sources of that are.
Thank you. Iman, if I can just bring you in. I mean, you, I'd like to talk a little bit about your inspiration as well, but could you also add, you communicate countering violent extremism. You know, how does that feel as a young person? You are sending messages out. You're responsible for the message that goes out to the wider world. Yeah. So, but what inspires you to do what you do, and you know, why do you? I suppose I'm asking, you know, what keeps you going? What you know, what drives you to do this?
That's a big one. It's quite. I'm not going to lie, it's quite an overwhelming experience to have to manage corporate communications and try to communicate such a sensitive topic, and any peace-building efforts, I would say, is very sensitive because you're putting the vulnerabilities of people right at the center of it. And as a communications professional, I find it important to not to make sure and protect that I don't exploit these vulnerabilities and instead influence towards a positive direction and affect positive change as opposed to adding more harm than good. And another aspect is knowing that there's a ripple effect of these communications. If I make a campaign or if we create a campaign particularly for a local audience, it doesn't mean that it won't reach Dubai, or it won't reach Saudi, or we won't reach even further to Indonesia or other countries. And so acknowledging that ripple effect is very important, and also knowing that there's an advantage to this ripple effect. An example I can provide is we worked with a young girl from Lebanon who created her own interfaith sort of campaign on her own personal platform on Facebook, and she welcomed her Sunni friend to join her in praying with her in a Shia mosque. And this relationship, when they went, she was telling her, you pray like you pray, and I would pray like I would. And then vice versa. So when she went to the Shia mosque, she did the same thing. And so this story kind of trickled out into other parts of the region and encouraged other young individuals to go out and between Coptic Christians and Muslims to kind of encourage each other to learn more about their different religions. And a comment that she received from someone in Saudi said that if you think that there is no effect to this initiative in your own context, in your own community, know that it has some effect to others in the world. And amplifying and identifying these voices are crucial to not only spreading positive messages, but also encouraging that mentorship, encouraging that there is that voice of influence from the same peer group that you're in that you can establish.
Thank you. I think the panel has actually just answered the question from the floor earlier. I think, Phil, you asked the question, who are the right young people? Your passion, why you're doing it, your passion, your understanding of it. I think it's great evidence of that, so thank you for that. Okay, my next question is to Ibrahim and Amina. You both work in think tanks, okay, and we've got a Trends think tank here as well, who's organising the event. What's your experience of working in a think tank? Are you agents of change within the think tank? Are you supported to be independent thinker, to research? Who wants to go first? Do you want to? Yeah.
So one of the things that I've always respected about think tank work, one of the things that drew me in about it was, getting to meet these experts, getting to meet these scholars, getting to meet people who devote all of their time to researching and trying to figure out solutions to regional and to state issues. And I know that it's a thankless job. I know that it's not one that you do for glory. It's not one that you do for power, really, but for influence. You do it because you genuinely want things to be better. And that's something that I respect more than anything. I have always been taught that a leader isn't someone who goes out and seeks power. A leader is someone who people look to when they're lost, who people look to for guidance. And that's something that I see very, very clearly in think tank work. And I think that people who devote themselves to academia, to research, to things of the like are leaders, are agents of change in the truest sense of the word. Because I genuinely believe that anybody who pursues a life of seeking change, who puts all of their time into trying to figure out a way to make things better, I think that that's what being an agent of change is all about. Now, whether or not I see myself as an agent of change, I would like to say that I want to be. I try my best, but I also know that the change that I want to be a part of, what I want to contribute to, is long coming. And I don't want to be content in anything that I've achieved now, because I know that my goals, my dreams are big, just like everybody else who's sitting on this panel with me. That being said, I've always thought that we are a combination of the people that we spend our time with. And I'm very grateful for Trends for putting this together, because I've been able to really spend time and meet young people who are agents of change. And if these are the people that I'm associating myself with, if these are the people that I'm surrounded by, then I have no issues defining myself as one as well.
Okay. Amina?
I definitely agree. I want to echo the thoughts, and as somebody, as a young researcher from a developing country, I definitely see value. I see merit in surrounding myself with like-minded individuals who are of my age or older or younger, and learning from them, absorbing those experiences. And I think that the think tank world is full of people like me who want to put their name on something that's innovative, something that's going to change the world. I like to believe that I belong to a group of game changers, to, I mean, not maybe me individually, but us together. We could change the narrative, global narrative in how you approach problems. And I feel that will contribute to a better future globally. And I say this coming from a developing country. So I definitely put my thoughts and all of my work and my field of interest and expertise in this statement. And I feel that working in a think tank, I have been empowered. I'm very grateful because I've been empowered to put my name on research. And, I was patted on the back and said, yeah, this is a great idea. Pursue it. Go. Gather information. Gather knowledge. Produce something that's going to make others think, that's going to make them say, I want to contribute to the work of this girl because I feel that she will make a change. And not just her, but everybody like her. Young people, or I say that age is very, it's a category that's kind of very fluid. So in a way, you are young, we are young. So it's, in that way, everybody with a vision, with some sort of freshness coming into the field is welcome in the think tank world. And that's why I'm here. Because I feel that there should be that innovative voice within research that galvanizes change, that empowers us to make more impactful statements, make more impactful research, gather evidence in a more impactful way. And I feel that that's why I'm here, to produce something meaningful. And, just saying that I'm a researcher at the age of 23 is kind of, going back to my grandma, I make her so proud all the time. But it's... But that's on a personal and family level, but on a global and more serious level, I feel that I do belong to a group of young visionaries. That's why I love things like, for example, sitting on this forum and in this panel and just engaging in meaningful discussions from people with diverse experiences, so that, as we said in the forum, so that our experiences and impact and roles can be scaled up to produce something meaningful. And I feel that's the essence, that's the core of it, to have roles that are meaningful with substance, and to scale up impact. And that's what working in a think tank world is for me, working with trends is for me, as somebody who has a vision. And this is kind of, the fertile ground to produce something with that vision.
Great. Iman, do you want to add anything to that from Hadaya's perspective, or from your perspective within Hadaya?
As in the relationship of think tank?
Yeah, just within that sort of think tank research, environment, and producing. We're just talking about producing research, collecting it, and you were talking earlier about presenting it to the world and how subtle sometimes you have to be, but also to get that message across. But do you feel you're part of a group of young people or a group of experts that are agents of change?
Absolutely. I think I was fortunate enough to join Hadaya, being the youngest one there still, I think. And I was fortunate to have that mentorship, to have that encouragement to kind of move forward with the ideas that I had. They did take a risk hiring someone to do communications on an international scope, and with someone with an unconventional background like psychology and visual arts, and then doing corporate communications is a little strange. But I do think that having that multidisciplinary perspective allows me to look at the issue from diverse lens, but also it encourages others who don't think that, because I'm not a political science major, or I'm not or a international relations major, doesn't mean that it's not something that you could be part of the solution. Everyone's part of the solution because we all live in this world right now, and I think the atmosphere at Hadaya, the diverse perspectives that are there, it allows for this multidisciplinary approach that looks at the issue of countering violent extremism from different angles. Because, I think that's...
Thank you. I want to move to Akil now. You're in what we class as a more traditional adult role, shall we say, and at 20, you've been the youngest member of the Scottish Parliament. How does that feel to be in that arena with adults? Do you feel comfortable? Are you challenged? Do you feel tokenistic, as being a young person there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it goes back to the point where it's a tick box exercise quite often when we're invited to events or meetings hosted by local authorities or the government. Although a way around that, I mean, this year's the Year of Young People, so there is a big emphasis to not so much invite a young person to that event, maybe do consultation before they go to that event, do a survey or do a focus group or, send a video of, their views on a particular topic. It is very hard sometimes, especially when you're young. I mean, one of the examples I can think of is we recently met with the SQA. So the SQA is the qualifications authority in Scotland that validate our exams. So in England it's a different one for GCSEs. So we have SQA, and we recently met with them from the Scottish Youth Parliament to discuss some concerns about appeal charges. Basically, they introduce charges to appeal your exam results. So if you think that it could have been remarked and it needs to be remarked and some things need to be reassessed, it now costs to do that, and that's not fair because not everybody can access that service. So we recently met with the SQ and they were very shocked because they never engaged with a young person, and they were from that then on they set up a youth group to engage with young people all across Scotland to ask about their views about how do you think the exam process works, how do we improve it. So often you're the only young person in the room, but you're often the trailblazer in setting up a new idea or, instilling and inspiring other managers from different organisations to set up something new that's not been done to engage with young people. But we're often reminded by a quote from Malala, who once said, "I raise my voice not so that I can shout, but so that I can give a voice to those who don't have one." And she also goes on to say that we cannot succeed if half of our society is held back, and that is so true. 42% of the world is young people. From my constituency, we have the highest number of young people. Actually, 60% of them are under 18 in Glasgow. That's the highest. And also Scotland, it's about 40% who are young people. So it's really, really true. We cannot have, one rule for one and one rule for the other. And that's why I got involved. I was very inspired by Malala and also other young people as well. It was young people that inspired me to get involved, to ensure that everybody's voice was heard and everybody had a seat at the table. It's hard sometimes. It's very, very difficult when decisions are made and when a young person is not consulted, because our whole approach, the Scottish Youth Parliament, is democratically elected. But the other thing is we base everything on Article 12 of the UNCRC, which states that everything that affects a young person's views should be sought. They should be asked about it. And that's not compulsory, so we're trying to do that. We're trying to encourage other people to do that, and that can often lead to wonderful things, better decisions for young people and to meet their needs.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask one more question to the panel, then I'll open it up to the audience for questions. But we've heard a lot of language today around participation, empowerment, dialogue, etc. But one thing that keeps coming in is meaningful. So what does meaningful mean to you? Who would like to go first? Yeah.
I think just drawing from the experience of conducting an internship program at Hidayah, knowing that meaningful participation, I guess, is having the platform to brainstorm ideas with everyone else, to drive the way or the direction a project is going, because you've voiced your opinion, because you've voiced your view on this, on a particular issue. And I think a lot of the youth, we try to give that experience at Hidayah for a lot of the students who come in or non-students who come in and would like to contribute to the common cause of countering violent extremism. And so I think in that manner, youth are more able to get a voice.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, it's also I would argue meaningful is the opposite of ticking boxes. I mean, to use the term that's been used in the previous panel and in the forum, it's kind of looking at the substance of a process or of an internship experience or of research, and actually trying to engage with the substance and with the core of the research or internship experience process, rather than just looking at titles or ticking boxes. So I feel that that is the opposite, and that's what should be kind of more reiterated. Yeah.
Okay.
Quite often, there's, in terms of the meaningful argument, you know, what is meaningful participation? Quite a lot of the time, it's often, you know, quick reactions to things. So say there's a mental health problem, which is huge in Scotland and the UK at the moment, and in other Western countries that, you know, people need support in terms of mental health. You know, a knee-jerk reaction from the government would be, you know, we'll engage with them for a week or 2 weeks, and that's it really, it all goes, and then the media attention dies down. So meaningful participation for us would mean sustained dialogue, to keep that conversation going, to keep the relationship going, to have mechanisms in place where we can review that dialogue, you know, how positive are those discussions. So in Scotland, we often have a framework, a national improvement framework, and that means that there's key indicators that are, you know, looked at in terms of health, education, youth work, all that kind of area, and it's reviewed annually. And now what's really happened, it's amazing, similar to Canada, now what we do, the Youth Parliament has a yearly meeting with our cabinet, so with the top team in government, and it's a yearly meeting, and we review that National Improvement Framework, looking at what are we achieving, what's not going well, how can we engage with young people more, what are the key issues of the day, what are we campaigning on. So having that sustained dialogue, because we never had that mechanism in place, you know, we're trying to explore other ways. It's similar to Canada. Canada set up the, you know, Youth Council, the Prime Minister's Youth Council, where they directly engage with the Prime Minister, and that's something what we wanted to do in Scotland, was mirror that engagement. You know, throughout the Year of Young People, though, this year has been absolutely amazing. We've had ministers come to our offices talking to us about lots of different things, disability employment gap, talking about transport, and any new bills that come in the Parliament, any new laws that are being passed. They always invite us to the Parliament to actually give evidence to committees, which is great because they're all televised and the media can see what we're saying as well. So we're given a fair hearing. So meaningful participation for us would mean sustained dialogue, something that's positive, and we ensure that it's positive. It's not just for talking, it's not a talking shop. It's something that we're actually going to achieve something out of.
Okay, thank you.
For me, meaningful dialogue must be genuine, you know? I feel like for a lot of youth, it's very, very easy to take an opinion, to take a stance that many people have taken before you, because it's safe, because it makes you appear legitimate, because you're not causing any waves. I feel if our contributions are to be meaningful, are to be genuine, we have to be unafraid to take new stances, to push forward new ideas. And these new ideas can't be shut down because of our age, you know? I think that if we are, as youth, going to contribute something meaningful, it needs to be something that comes from us as youth. It can't be just the same thing that people are hearing from a younger face. That's not meaningful. That's not changing anything. That's not utilizing the voices and perspectives of youth. That's not realizing the potential that I think youth have.
Okay, thank you. So I'll pause my questions at the moment. So I'd like to open any questions up to the audience. If you want to put your hand up, introduce yourself, and a microphone will come. Yeah, thank you.
Hello. Okay, good afternoon, and I'm Rushanjil Mamet from the Global Green Growth Institute based here in Abu Dhabi. Before I actually begin with my questions, I would like to congratulate the organizers of this event, Dr. Ahmed and Dr. Chantal. I think it's very successful, and I would like to thank all the panelists for all the sessions. You are very inspiring, very engaged, and I felt that your passion, your dedication, and commitment to the work that you do radiates in this room, and thank you so much. So I hate to be off tangent, but given my background in environmental management and green growth, I've heard the discussion today on peace, youth, empowerment and security. However, little has been said, or there's no or little explicit consideration on the interlinkages between peace and environmental security. So with that said, I do believe that peace, development, and environmental security are actually interdependent and indivisible. So based on the experiences of our panelists, how do you think we can elevate the consideration and discussion of youth, peace, development, and environmental security nexus in the discussions? And how important do you think environmental security should be taken into consideration in the work that you do? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other questions before we answer that one? Yeah. Got two more, so we'll take the two questions from the floor and then we'll ask the panel.
I'm Chantal Young-Oudhat from WISE. I actually want to follow up on the question here. The topic is youth, peace and security, or youth for sustaining peace. So I'd like to ask all of you, what are for you the main security challenges? Because I think you make a very good point that climate change, of course, is a big issue. A second question, if I may. Ibrahim, I think you said, we're all here because we want to make the world a better place, and I think that is true for all the people in this room. Are any of you, I know Akil is already doing, but are any of you considering maybe political life? And because one of the sort of gripes from a lot of young people that we've seen in the UN study is that they find access to political processes being extremely difficult. And so I'd like to get your views on that.
Okay, thank you. One more question just on the second row. Thank you.
Phil Dufty from the Emirates Diplomatic Academy again. I just had a question. I thought it was a very interesting strand of discussion around research and research into peace and security issues. And I was just wondering if you could say a bit more about whether you feel in practice from either your experience or seeing other young researchers working, whether there are real obstacles to getting your work published, and therefore we're losing the sort of interesting, innovative voice of young researchers. And if so, if you think there are any kind of solutions out there, any very practical ideas you might have about how we can create, more spaces for getting the voice of youth and young people's research into the public space.
Okay, thank you. Okay, shall we start with the environment question? So does anybody want to go first around that? Where do you see the link? Do you want to elaborate on the youth development, youth security, youth peace and environment?
So in the Scottish Youth Parliament, we have a number of committees. They look at different areas. So they mirror the actual Scottish Parliament's committees. So education, health, environment, international development, Europe. So we have, the Environment Committee has looked extensively at the Paris 2020 Agreement, climate change. In Scotland, we've got, the government is absolutely committed to, tackling climate change, and we've just been described by the UN as being world leaders in terms of tackling that. So they do work with them, the Youth Parliament's Committee. I suppose, again, it's all about education as well, so we're trying to ensure that everybody's aware of it. Not everybody's fully, aware of all the environmental concerns. It's basically those who are already in that bubble or who are, volunteering in a, organisation, a charity. So there's certainly more to do in terms of making people aware in terms of what the environment really is, what the challenges are.
Thank you. Amina?
And I definitely have to add, I agree, and just to add from the, for example, research and non-governmental point of view, For example, working for a think tank, I'm not an expert in environmental security, for example, but I always try to look at how I can bond my field of expertise and interest, which is migration and forced displacement, to issues of, for example, security, peace building, or environmental safety, or environmental security, sustainable solutions to a better future. So in that way, I always try to, for example, engage in discussions with experts on different topics. And that's kind of that interlinkage of issues, that to use the word that you asked. So in that way, in the research world, there's always that overlap of topics, of fields of expertise. That's where the flexibility as well comes from. So yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert in the field, but that's what openness about it is all about. The kind of combining it with what I'm an expert in, to create or design a better solution, an interdisciplinary one, as Iman said.
I think similar to Amina and Aki, I mean, I'm not an expert at all in environmental issues, but I do think that it has to somehow be an underlying consideration whenever we create programs, especially in things like countering violent extremism, when we're looking at it from different angles, and we're trying to see what the push and pull factors are for radicalization. And it could very much be climate change that could affect someone to not have the resources or the lack of resources in their own community that would push them or drive them towards that. And so from my point of view, communications is raising awareness of that and finding the interlinkages as well in that matter.
Okay.
On the topic of environmental security and sustainability, climate change, I can tell you, just based on my own personal life and my own network of friends and young people, this is an issue that's very, very relevant to us. It's something that young people are very passionate about, because we know that the world that we're inheriting has issues, down to the deepest, most environmental level, and that's scary. I do believe that this is something that we should be throwing, our weight behind as youth. I know that as, this generation of youth transitions and becomes politically powerful, this is something that'll be at the forefront of politics, but that's a decade or two from now. What I do believe that youth should be doing, as they are doing, is utilizing our power through social media, through things like that, where we do actually have a very, very powerful voice. But no, it is an issue that is important. It's an issue that I agree. I'm surprised it hasn't been covered, but I think that I don't want to speak for all of us, but yeah.
I think it's interesting that the word environmental security is joined together, and that's how you asked the question. I'm actually working with a 9-year-old girl in the UK, and I'm writing a research report on her experience of having environmental rights. Now, when we discuss this, and we could sort of look at the theory behind it and the other previous research, it would come down to environmental security. But with children, the word security isn't being used. It's actually it's around their right to have a healthy world to live in. So I think there's quite I'll probably talk to you a little bit later about including that word within the language, within research as well. So thank you. I just want to go to Chantal's question about political careers. So have any of you been inspired by Akil's political career? And I'm now assuming that you're going to continue in politics, but you may want to explain it. Is that the case? Is this the area you want to go in?
I'm not sure, to be honest. And to be perfectly honest with you, I didn't actually want to work in the civil service. It was just a gamble to apply for it. There was a big recruitment campaign because of Brexit, so 5,000 people applied for 150 posts. New posts created because of Brexit and all the changes that are happening. So it was expanding, so I never expected to get it. And 2 weeks ago, one of the HR staff phoned up from the civil service and asked, Akil, how old are you? And I thought, that's so cool that you don't even know my age. She's like, I've been so busy, so I didn't even know your age. So she actually had to ask me. So I think I'm the youngest from this contingent, the campaign. So I don't really want to continue. My main passion is teaching, is to teach, but you never know. Quite a lot of teachers have moved back into civil service or gone into teaching, vice versa. Because I think this year, quite funny, was during the interview process, the actual presentation and the project was based on the Year of Young People. So I thought it was very ironic that, I know all about this and it's based on Year of Young People. So it was really good and really helpful. So I think they were trying to get a message there that we want young people. They certainly do. I mean, the Permanent Secretary, the head of the Scottish Government, has done a lot of work with us with the Youth Parliament, to try and encourage them to get jobs in, politics and to work in government, because it changes perspectives and it gives them a new perspective, a new eye-opener really to different problems when our budgets are being squeezed and when, politics of the world is getting even more difficult.
Okay, thank you. If I just extend on the question about, going into politics, if you're not wanting to, why are you not wanting to? Is there barriers there?
A barrier?
Yeah, is there any barriers to going into...
going into politics? I think for other countries it's different. We are very lucky to have that. However, there are, barriers. If you're disabled, you're less likely to be involved in politics. Ethnic minority. We have a huge issue where young people who are from an ethnic background find it very hard to understand the systems in the UK and to try and engage with them, often because of the negative rhetoric that there is around immigration and people from different backgrounds. We've set up a few things. So there's a political fund to try and engage with disabled people and ethnic minorities and women as well, because there's a real lack of women. Even though we've got 4 party leaders who are women in Scotland, we still need to engage with them because, 51% of the population in Scotland is women and less than 51% make up our, elected members. There's a lot of great work, but there is a lot of barriers, from an ethnic background, disability, and those are quite obvious. The recruitment process might not be open to them, might not be attractive to work there because you're from a different background.
Okay, thank you. Iman, were you going to...
So I come from a background that's from the mixed third cultural background, and so I don't see myself per se joining or running for anything political. My background's Palestinian, Filipino, and I've grown up here, and so it's a bit tricky for me to choose which side I would join in that sense if I wanted to, and I foresee myself more on the international politics sort of platform as opposed and more in the background of doing what I know best, which is corporate communications, and not necessarily on the policy side, but supporting that.
Okay. Ibrahim?
As far as an interest in politics, I definitely wouldn't count it out. I love the idea of being able to use my voice to represent people, and if that's something that I feel like the people around me one day would want me to do, and the time was right for it, absolutely. Although I am hesitant to kind of buy into the fact that you need to be a politician to make a difference, I feel like this is the status quo. You become an elected official and then you use your voice to make a difference, but we have a lot more power as citizens, as global citizens than we think. And right now I am content utilizing my voice through research and through academia and through facts to try to make a difference. And if that transitions into politics one day, and if that's the natural course of my life, then so be it. I'm excited for whatever comes next. But I do not believe that you have to be a politician to make a positive change and to make the world a better place.
Okay, thank you. Just going on to the last question around research and publishing research. Are you publishing research? I know you both are. I've read your work, but is it easy to publish research? What's the process? What's the barriers? Where are you in your research journey? Who wants to? I'll ask Mina first.
Thank you. There are many, many obstacles in publishing research, honestly. First of all, it's very difficult to produce impactful research with substance and evidence and something that can be, replicable. So in that way, there's already, I feel, a crisis in the research field in terms of, there are certain values that we should push forward, and there are certain benchmarks that we should all stick to and adhere to, and a lot of people don't. So I feel that it's not just restricted to youth, it's just a general, I feel that there are several very important issues in publishing meaningful and impactful research that can inspire change or, for example, a different approach to a specific field. And I feel that connecting it, for example, back to youth, I feel that there should be more, for example, young people who are doing research, more young people who, you know, are invited to teams, for example, invited to discussions, forums, panels like this one, to exchange ideas, exchange their research practices. Because, for example, I do my work. I only recently started doing interviews. I do most of my work as a data analysis exercise, so big data, and, you know, I do regressions. And to me, it's really fascinating to learn about, for example, semi-structured interviews and apply a mixed methods approach to my research, especially in the field of migration and displacement, to produce better results, to give a soul to numbers. So that's something that, for example, personally as a researcher, I'm trying to do right now. And it's getting more young people with different expertise and learning from them. So I feel that's that kind of the substance before the final result of publishing that also needs to change and get more fresh ideas in, get more young people in, get more, you know, kind of break the boundaries and just thinking outside of the box for just a little bit. You know, if we change it for 1%, that's good enough, at least for my generation, for example, so that we can change it 2 or 3% for the next one that's coming. So yeah, I feel that's yeah.
Okay. What do you need though? What would be the one thing that would help you get published?
I would say a larger platform and just more awareness and just getting knowledge out there. That's the media, that's the media role within this. That's the kind of all the social networks. That's the communications and the networking among young people, and not just among young people, among everybody. I feel that there should be more networking. There should be more transparency of research. There should be more idea sharing. So that we're all on the same page about what to do, when to do it, who to approach, if we have interesting ideas, and if we have something that's worth pursuing. So I feel that that's kind of the importance of platforms and channels that address issues and that, you know, can connect people with similar different ideas so that they can be combined. So I think that that's what we were discussing in the forum as well, kind of just providing the platforms to produce something.
Okay, thank you. Ibrahim?
I do think that as far as publishing research, there is difficulty. That being said, there are, you know, people, organizations that will support young people in their research. The issue is awareness, you know, whether or not young people, youth are aware of the fact that these opportunities are there. There's also the fact that research is, for the most part, it's grueling if you want to do it right, you know? It's a long-term process. You have to fact check. You have to make sure that what you're putting out there is. You have to check for the voice, you have to check for the facts. It takes a very specific person to put out constant research, knowing a lot of times that this research that you're putting out will not have an immediate impact. It's not going to be something that's going to create waves right away. It's not going to send shock waves around the world. It's just going to be, sometimes it feels like you're just putting out this research, this hard work into the void and waiting to see what happens. And for a lot of youth, that's an exhausting thought. But once again, there are a lot of young people like the ones that you see here today that are okay with fighting that fight. I think that for youth, the avenues that they have to be researched, to put their voice out there, need to be displayed more prominently. They need to be more aware of it. And I think that is actually something that we as youth have to do for one another. Let other youth know that these opportunities are available. Not wait for them to just find out through the way that we found out, because we cannot assume that everyone is going to walk the same path as us, that everyone has the same connections that we do. Mm-hmm. You know, sitting on this stage and being able to represent youth is because we've worked hard, but there's also an element of luck to it, you know?
What was interesting observing yesterday was when we all met, and people like myself got my business card out, these guys just got WhatsApp out and just connected straight away. So they've already created a group, a network, you know, really, really quickly. They haven't invited me to that WhatsApp group yet, but I am expecting one later on today. Okay, so I want to sort of round up the panel really and talk about a negative and a positive, okay? And really it's about what are the barriers for other young people? Because I see you are now experts. You're in this arena. Okay, you were invited to the event along with all the other experts because of your expertise. Okay, you've been identified, and we wanted to celebrate you. But what are the barriers for other young people joining us? Okay. And the second one is that, a bit like Chantal's question in regards to the wand, but if you could speak to one person in this room who wants to be where you want to be, what advice would you give them?
I think that as far as barriers, and this is something that we actually discussed yesterday, a lot of the times the barriers to other youth doing what we're doing is us as youth. And it's a frustrating thing to think about, but we know that we have to fight this uphill battle. We know that we're doing things that are tough. We're, exhausting ourselves trying to become successful. And a lot of times when we do that, like you were saying yesterday, we kind of block off avenues for other people younger than us to do what we're doing because we don't want to be replaced. We're scared. That's just the reality of the world. And that's a mentality I think that we as youth need to get around. We have to be okay with the idea of succession. We have to be okay with the fact that someone else is going to do what we're doing, and hopefully, if the world is going to become better, are going to do it better than we are. And it has to be a cycle in that sense. So us supporting one another, seeing each other's strengths, and not being intimidated by the strengths of other people, because we know that ultimately we need one another to reach where we want to be. As far as advice for anyone who wants to be where we are, the only thing I can really say is to understand that this is something that if you're doing it right, as frustrating as it is, you're not going to see results right away. You're not going to feel your work. Sometimes it's going to feel like you're fighting a fight that no one's aware of. But it's moments like this and opportunities like this that make you realize that we are heading in the right direction. And just be patient and keep fighting and hope for a better tomorrow.
Okay.
I think one of the big things, and this was discussed before, to try and encourage other people to come into, politics and to be involved in decision making, is value. A lot of young people don't see the value or credibility of being involved in something because at the end of the day, it's all voluntary, and that is difficult in itself. It's, and young people are busy with their own lives. They might be studying, they've got issues with family, personal issues, all the rest of it. But I think governments need to do a lot more to try and recognise that achievement, the contribution that young people can make and should make, and value them in that they are, loved and valued. A big thing in Scotland right now, there's a big focus on care experience young people who are obviously very difficult backgrounds, care experience, and they've had adverse childhood experiences. A big thing throughout the language that we use is love. And that you're valued. So we want to try and open up to everybody. And I think love is a word that we can use for anyone, for any young person, for any older person even, is that you're valued and loved, and that, it's going to benefit not only you, your confidence, your self-esteem, your life skills, it's going to benefit all your peers, everybody around you. You're ensuring that their voices are heard as well as yours. And the benefit of the government is that they don't need to do their own research. They don't need to, spend lots of money on projects to find out what do young people think about this. They can come to us. They can come to the experts, the youth parliament. They can come to the youth groups that we've set up. Instead of, duplicating and spending lots of money, we can do it in a lot better way, efficient way. Like the NGOs do. They do a lot better than political governments attached to an ideology.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, my message is it's simple. It's kind of a message I say to myself all the time. It's ask. Just don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to inquire, branch out, reach out to people. And if it's your, community or your street, your neighborhood, or if it's your family or an institute or your, college, educational institution, I feel that just asking, more people should be encouraged to just ask, because curiosity is what we all have. So it's just ask. And I feel that that's the beauty of kind of absorbing new knowledge and just participating in this, as agents of change, to use that word. So yeah, just not to be afraid to ask and voice out your ideas and voice out what you come up with, for example, because even though it might sound silly, the moment you voice it out, another person might come and say, yes, that idea might not be applicable, but let me, combine it with what I already have and then make something impactful and meaningful. So I feel that that's kind of just sharing and asking. And getting yourself out there is another kind of, that's the stepping outside of your comfort zone.
And just another thing, just a few seconds, it's Giathma, the UN Special Envoy on Youth, that UN Secretary General recently said in an interview, demand for a seat at the table, don't wait for an invitation, and I thought that is so true. So if you're a young person here, demand a seat at the table. Don't wait, don't sit back, you know, you get involved and you push that. And, you know, if it's a no, it's a no, just keep on trying, don't give up.
I think to answer the first part, to echo as well what my fellow panelists said, is that take the plunge. I mean, just go for it. Have the confidence to voice out your ideas, and also acknowledge when your limitations in your ideas as well, and to ask for that help. I think youth are at an advantage where they are fully aware of, for instance, the communication technologies that exist. I mean, you have social media influencers. I'm not saying everyone should be a social media influencer. It's a hard job, but it's that platform. There's that existing platform that you can use to voice out your ideas and your opinions, and to also, to answer the first question that you asked, is that how do we reach, or what's the gap that's currently youth are facing, is, I think, asking a lot of my peers, they're saying that we know this program exists, we know this opportunity exists, but we don't know how we can take part. So having that clarity of that process as well is important for youth to be able to access it.
Okay, thank you. So just really to sum up the panel, we've talked about the level of engagement. We've talked about why you're engaged, what got you inspired. But I think the key thing for me is that we also gave suggestions to actually involve more young people and encourage more young people to be part of this, within this role, take on similar roles within this arena where you've all been. So it's my pleasure to thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.